Great. Thank you all for joining this morning. This session launches our webinar series, which focuses on various key health and wellness subject matter topics. Like today's, is to give you an introduction to these topics, and it's a basic foundation. Our intention is to get you familiar with them, but not to be an expert on these topics, which are among the core topics you may encounter with any health and wellness client, as well as those that are addressed in the National Board exam. I'm serving as both your associate director and TA. My name is Rita Bruce. Yes, you can call me Rita, but I'll monitor the chat today as Vanessa shares her slides. She'll be focused on the content, and you're welcome to put questions in the chat or even to raise your hand using Zoom. I'll also create a parking lot for questions that may fall outside the topics presented today, and that's for additional follow-up after today's webinar. You'll need to make certain that you're capturing the keywords. If you haven't downloaded the keyword tracker from Canvas, please do so. It'll be useful to you. So now, without further ado, I'm going to give you the first keyword. That word is transformation. Again, that word is transformation. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it off to a wonderful speaker this morning, Vanessa King.
Hi, welcome. My name is Vanessa King, and to get started, I would just love for us to center and kind of align ourselves. I know that it can be a little hectic fitting these things into your day, so this is something that I do before I start any session as I'm making a transition from one thing to the next. So please begin to take a comfortable seat. Let's close our eyes. And as you come into a comfortable seat, finding your grounding, if your legs are crossed, please uncross them and feel your feet comfortably, equally balanced and rooted on the ground. As we begin our sessions with any communication with people or our health coaching clients, it's great to come into the present moment. So we're really able to connect and listen and be open. And the best tool we have to connect and come into the present moment is really our breath. So take a breath in through your nose and exhale. Let go of the momentum of your day as you exhale through your mouth. Let's do it again. Inhale through your nose and exhale through your mouth. One more time. Inhale and exhale. And as your body begins to relax more and we develop more awareness, just feeling any tension you may be holding in your face that sometimes our clients can see, even though we don't realize it, and they can often take personally. So we want to clear that away because it's always really about us, right? So just as you relax your facial muscles, noticing if your eyes are looking up or around or moving behind your lids, and just gently turn that gaze behind your lids down towards your heart, towards your stomach. Notice if your tongue is pressed anxiously up into the roof of your mouth, and let your tongue relax down into the bottom of your mouth. Let's take a couple more seconds to focus in on our breath to keep us present. And we're going to breathe in and out through the nose now. But as you inhale, noticing the warmth, noticing the coolness. I just did it and felt it. Feel the coolness of your breath entering, the air entering your nostrils. And as you exhale, notice the warmth of your breath leaving your body. That same warmth that we extend out to our health coaching community, our clients, our coworkers. Bless. And we'll just do that again, inhaling, feeling the cool breath entering and the warm breath exiting. To finish, taking a moment to set an intention for what you'd like to receive from our time together today. It can be a sentence. I like to stick with one word, keeps it simple, something that in sessions, if I start to lose myself, I can just come back to that word to recenter. And also practicing gratitude. We always want to stay in that place of positivity. And through gratitude, we do that. So thinking of who you can thank. None of us is here on our own, right? None of us has gotten to this place or to have the ability to take this course without other people's help. So just a gratitude for whoever's made it, anybody or many people who've made it possible for you to be here today. Great. And opening your eyes. If you are, if you would like, you can write that word down. Sometimes it helps to have a visual, or you can just, sometimes I use it as a mantra. We're all different, right? So whatever you feel would is going to work for you. But to introduce myself, let me start to share my screen again. So my name is Vanessa King. I've been part of this program now since 2018. I was very excited when I met at the time Jen and Jennifer Wood and Petra were running the program. And so I worked closely with them. And it's so great to see how the team has grown. We have great people like Rita and other speakers. This is the first webinar. And so I introduce things that are going to build that other presenters are going to be developing more. So if everything doesn't come together right now, no concern, no worries. You will get it by the end. And I also give my contact information if there's anything you need me to clarify for you. We're going to talk about introduction, an introduction where we're going to look at why we eat, what's a healthy diet, right? What does that even mean, especially in the world of social media? Topics that come up a lot in health coaching, weight management, how health and coaching, wellness, and nutrition fit together, and then resources. So, and briefly about me. So, I started in yoga and meditation. So, that's been a part of my life since I was 18, and I'm almost 50 now. So, it's definitely been a huge part of what underlies everything that I do. I moved into nutrition through health promotion, wellness, doing a lot of worksite wellness. I spent 9 years teaching at American and George Washington University, teaching nutrition. I actually started the first health coaching course at GW, which was crazy fun back in 2017. I've had a private practice. Um, and then when COVID hit in 2000, I closed my private practice and moved strictly into hospital care and working through that very challenging, through the pandemic, challenging time. And then recently, in the last few years, I transitioned out of clinical and I work as a media spokesperson for nutrition, really because I feel like from all of the clients and patients, thousands of people I've worked with over the years, I feel like there's so much noise out there and people are just like, I just want to know how to treat myself well and how to be healthy. And there's so many conflicting things and influencers and doctors and dietitians. So this has really been what I do as having a platform to reach thousands has at the same time has been really very satisfying, professionally satisfying. So in this field, I think there's so many different things you can do. So I just wanted to share some of the things that I've done, all of which have made me very happy. So, nutrition is really the science of of food and what it does in our bodies. Like I said, there's a lot of assumptions, and even in our culture, there's a lot of ways that food play into our verbiage. Like, you are what you eat. Is he worth his weight in salt? I had butterflies in my stomach. So, food does play a huge part of our lives. And in health coaching, you'll see people, a lot of the things that people will come in if they're talking about heart health, weight management, social emotional things, food typically will factor in somewhere. And so I think a great place to start is looking at why we eat what we eat. When I was in grad school, I feel like a huge awakening for me is that health is not a motivation. So a lot of times you're like, or when you're with your kids, you're like, well, I have to eat this, it's gross. And you're like, because it's good for you, because it's healthy, because you want to grow and be strong, all these things. But it's like, but that was like the biggest lesson was that health is not a motivation for people. We all have different motives for why we eat the foods that we eat, but then we also have certain social constraints that will shape the way that we eat. And I think the biggest one are the social determinants of health. And these are environmental factors that will shape what you eat. So these are things like your living environment, your neighborhood. I'm sure you've heard of food deserts and food swamps, how much money you have. I think that's come up a lot. I know for me, that's come up in my work, that's come up a lot as we look at the price of eggs, the price of beef in the summer. How are people able to afford healthy food? As prices go up, as tariffs go up, and all of this. So this is a huge factor as well. Cultural ethnicity. We all, thankfully, we're a beautiful mosaic, and we have different cultural foods from our background that our families raised us on, things that will end up find where we find comfort, or maybe the only foods we know how to prepare. And education, having access to knowledge about food, health, connections between food and health, your health and your healthcare provider. We know in America, like our one of our biggest expenses is our health insurance. And so, do you have access to healthcare? If someone's on SNAP benefits, have their SNAP benefits been cut lately? Um, do you have doctors that you can see regularly to give you guidance or give you referrals to health coaches and dietitians to talk about your food? A huge one I see a lot is social support and community. Do you have a social network, family, friends of people who can support you? And physical ability. Are you visually impaired? Are you bound to a wheelchair? Do you have mobility issues that will impact what kind, can you make a five-course meal? That might not be realistic for you. Um, and so we have to, yeah, physical ability to make different dishes. And then your working conditions, what does your job look like? Are you commuting an hour and a half each way? Does that, like, how does packing a lunch work for that? How does that coming home and having time to cook food before or after your work? So these are all examples of how social determinants of health impact what we eat. And this is something that impacts everybody across the board. I think another learning experience for me, much younger when I started this career before I had a family and had to feed four people, and it was just me and then me and my partner, was that I didn't understand. Like I spent 40% of my income on food, and that just made sense to me. Like I wanted organic food. I wanted like quinoa and like the latest crazes and black rice and all of these things. And, that's for most people, that's not possible. That's not a price. And then there are people who I know very well. I've worked with clients who can afford to eat healthier food, but they just don't believe in spending money on food. So, all of these different things. So, because these are so important and they will come up consistently with the clients that you work with, and yourself, and hey, let's face it, our families and Thanksgiving dinner, this is all the stuff that we see. I'd like you to take a moment. We're going to do a poll here and looking at these social determinants of health. Which one do you feel most impacts why you eat what you eat, you know? And I mean, this one's a little tricky for me. I think Rita's going to start the poll, but I'll say like I can say every one of these impacts what I eat, every solitary one of them. Like when I worked in the hospital, I got free food. I ate amazing. I ate like as many meals as I could there because I didn't have to cook it, and I was part of the team that planned the menu. So that was great. It was free and delicious. So that was but on other times like I rode my bike to work and I couldn't really carry food with me in a backpack, and then food was really expensive when I got to work, like at the GW campus food was really expensive, so that impact ate very differently. So I think because this is such a great topic and something that's going to come up with your clients, we thought that we would give you just putting you in a breakout room with two people, giving you each about, let's do like 4 minutes, I think, since everyone seems pretty aligned already. Let's do 2 minutes and 2 minutes just to share how these social determinants of health impact your food choices and what you eat. And if you have time, talking about like two of them would be great. You can be, it can be your number one, it can be two that stand out for you, it can be, one that you've never thought of before, one that you don't really see as clearly how it impacts, and maybe you guys can just like have a little um, conversation about that. How does that sound?
That sounds good. I'm going to move folks to a room. Okay, we're back.
Great. So, does anybody from their breakout have anything they'd like to share with the group that came up that you thought would be beneficial for everybody?
It sure. Do I have to raise my hand?
No, go
Nope.
for it.
Nope.
Popcorn's fine.
Philemon, go.
And Suleiman, you
Nope.
can go after James. Go ahead, James.
Oh, great.
For me, I didn't mean to jump in front of you, man. My bad. Um, for me, there was three. Um, for us, it was four total. For Carrie, if I can, it was health because of some challenge she has, because we all have our own individual health needs and concerns. And so for her, health was the primary thing, something that I might be able to eat or others might be able to eat. She might not be able to eat. So that narrows things down for her options. For me, it was community, um, environment and community, um, then money, and then it was, I said knowledge, because I said when I first got out of the military, I lived in Southeast. I didn't know Southeast DC was a food desert because I didn't know what the food desert was. So then I reordered it to knowledge, and education, because I wouldn't know that I was in the area that was a food desert if I had maybe heard this language 20 years ago. Um,
Mhm.
I might have operated differently, and ate differently than I did in the past.
Great. Thanks for sharing, James. Suleiman, can you share? Did I say, I
Thank you,
sorry.
Vanessa. Yeah. I think the motivator for me to eat healthy and choose good choices is health. Uh, but the one that pushes me away from being healthy and make me choose like only like pleasure making food or that just to enhance my mood like is the mood and pleasure seeking like instant gratification. That's what we like reflected. So one like sometimes if I am in low mood, I just as you have in the states, DoorDash, we have like and order it, and
Sure.
yeah, okay, this brings some remorse after, but this kind of self battling with
Suleiman,
dopamine, yes,
You actually bring up a really good point. So, when we look at
thank you.
social determinants of health, we're looking at why we eat what we eat. Okay, so
Mm,
you're giving examples of what we eat, and what we eat becomes more like you're saying about preference and mood and personal things. Does that make sense to everybody? So, let's say I'm craving, I don't know, I'm like craving something, but give me a food. Like I'm craving a burger,
Done.
right?
Yeah.
So, or I'm craving a
Yeah.
salad. I'm craving a salad. The kind,
Mm,
if I get a salad and the kind of salad that I'm going to get is going to, that might be my personal, like what I want to eat, right? But
mm,
why, but the kind of salad I get, the underlying will be like, am I living in a food desert or a food swamp where I'm not gonna be able to buy a salad unless it's pre-made in a bag and probably it's going to look a little limp and
mm,
busted, right? Or can I
mm,
afford to buy that sweet green salad? Is that the salad I'm gonna have? Or is it gonna be like a bag salad or is it gonna be a discount salad? Culture and ethnicity. Am I Greek? I want a Greek salad, you know?
mm,
Like, am I Jamaican? I want like some jerk sauce on my salad. You know what I mean? So, and then with my education, well, am I just
mm,
going to eat coleslaw with like covered in mayonnaise or a McDonald's salad that has like that actually has more calories than a burger because of the salad dressing, but I don't know that because I don't have the education
mm,
on it. My physical ability, well, I'm not making a salad. So I'm going to need maybe canned or frozen vegetables to make this a reality for me to get this salad, right? My
mm,
working conditions, salad's got to stay cold. Am I really realistically with my work? I work with people who work in prisons. This is a very tough population because of the way they're not able to store things. Everything has to be shelf stable. It has to stay in their locker for like 12-hour shifts. So are your
Mm,
work situation conducive to you eating that salad that you want? You're probably not going to have a salad if you're working in a prison, right? Like that may
mm,
be what you want to eat, but you're going to have to shift gears. You know,
yeah.
with your health. Like maybe you want a salad, but if you have like certain types of cancer with lower immune, you can't eat raw food. So you're not really having a salad. You have some steamed vegetables. And then you're
Mm,
providing your social support. If your community, I see this all the time with families where it's like one person's trying has like they have diabetes, they have heart disease, they need to eat a certain way. Their family is either with them or against them. You know, their family's like, well, we eat at McDonald's and we like to have fried chicken and we like to have, in Hawaii, it's called plate lunch, which is a big pile of mac salad, a big pile of rice,
mm,
and then meat battered and fried. And that's just what people eat. So if your family is not, and if you're going to sit there trying to eat your salad while everybody's eating fried chicken and rice and macaroni, you know,
mm,
but at the same time, a lot of times people come in with their family who are like, we are all changing how we eat because our very important family relative has now been diagnosed with diabetes. Does that say? So there's a difference between why you eat what you eat and the social determinants of health and what you choose to eat, which is more
mm.
preferences. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, amazing. Thank you. Just sometimes because like health food like it's available like in in the fridge or like mom can I have this idea that healthy food is will not enhance my mood. I need to take care of myself. I need to be happy, and it's like a cigarettes. It's like I need something to boost my dopamine or something. So this is what I sometimes suffer with. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. So those are two different things.
Mm,
Social determinants of
mm,
health are one set of things,
mm,
cravings and preferences are another set of things, right? So
yeah,
with
yeah,
this, we're
yeah.
really looking at these social determinants of health that are going to come
So
up with
true.
clients and that are going to underlie working with people. And so a lot of times what we do with our intake forms is this is something we'll include. We want to
Okay.
we're like, do you have access? Like, because there's no point in me working with someone and talking about all of these great healthy things that they have no access to. Like
Mm,
that's 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 not empowering. That's not helping anybody. And so that's what's really
mm,
great with health coaching is that it's really client led, right?
mm,
Like, I mean, we have the knowledge and we have the background because we need to be able to support them, but we don't make these choices. But these are the kind of things that we need to know about our clients' life
makes sense.
to be
Yeah,
like,
makes sense.
how are we going to help them?
I
Right? Like
thought
we
makes
can't
sense.
start
Yeah.
at
Mm,
preferences because
Yeah.
they can be like, I want to eat all these foods. Like, I really love Ethiopian food. Like, I grew up, I don't know how to cook it. And you're like, great, we're going to get you this Ethiopian menu. And then it's like, there's no Ethiopian food. I live in LA. Like, for me to get
mm,
Ethiopian food, it literally is an hour from me. So, is that
mm,
realistic? No. So, that's where preferences are great. They're important too. We do look at them, but these are the undercurrents these are very important undercurrents that will have a very large impact on how people eat.
Mhm.
makes sense. Thank you so much.
Okay, we're going to
Christiane
move
had her
on.
hand up.
So I was just going to say the social aspect of food. I think in our culture, so much revolves around going out to eat together when extended family comes, or and so for me, and I think I shared this in cohort. I have a very supportive husband, and we have 3 adult children and a daughter-in-law. But when they come home, it is bringing home a pizza or Barabas or so I think, and my husband eats very healthy and I tend to eat very healthy, but there's a lot that happens with social. And so just that social aspect of eating out and can be a deterrent to eating healthy.
Yeah, and I think the social determinants of health, I think we're putting a spin on it where they're like always negative. They're not always negative, right? They can go either way, but the point is that they have a huge impact on what we eat. That's what's important to know when you're working with clients, that these are going to have a huge impact on what they're able to eat, what they're willing to eat, how you're working with them. You need to consider them. Okay, let's move on to nutrition, food. What do we get from it? So the things that we get from food are energy, right? We all know that if we don't eat, we don't have any energy. We get certain nutrients and we get things that are non-nutrient compounds that have been shown to provide a health benefit. These are called phytochemicals and zoochemicals. And even if you've never heard these words, you know what these food, you are familiar with these. Remember when people were all starting to drink red wine because of the resveratrol, right? What's interesting is omega-3s are actually, they're actually a nutrient. They fall under fat. We'll get to that, but they're also considered a zoochemical, like fish oil supplements, right? They're both. So these are chemicals that chemicals sound so scary, but they're compounds and components of foods that convey a health benefit, but don't fall into one of our six nutrient categories. So the six nutrient categories are carbohydrates, proteins, lipids, which what we call vernacularly fat, and then minerals, vitamins, and water, right? So those six. Some we call macros, which I think if you follow anything in popular, you've heard this term in popular nutrition, right? In popular media, the macros, counting your macros, right? So those are macros just mean we need them in large quantities to survive. So these are our carbohydrates, our proteins, and our lipids. And then micro makes sense. It's going to be things we need in small amounts, but they're pretty important. A lot of our deficiencies are actually these micronutrients, vitamins, and minerals. And then water, some people call it a macro because we need it in large quantities. Some people call it its own thing because, as you'll see, the macronutrients provide calories, whereas micronutrients don't. Water doesn't provide calories, but it's definitely not a micronutrient. So water can go either way. So it can be called a macro, it can be called its own category. So the first thing we get from food is energy. Energy we measure in calories. So when you're like, oh, how much is in this yogurt? 100 calories, 200 calories. That's the amount of energy. In America, other countries use like joules and things, but in America we use calories. They're typically called kilocalories, so it's kcals, but again, don't talk, no one would talk to their client like that unless you want them to run out the door, right? Right, because the first thing we always wanted to do with our clients is connect with them. And so coming in with big fancy words, not going to do it, right? So calories. And so, like I said, which nutrients provide them? The macronutrients provide the calories. And then we'll look at where else we get calories. So macronutrients, once again, carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. Carbohydrates, this is important because I feel, again, if you follow popular media, they're always like, oh, carbohydrates, so bad for you, low carb diet, stay away from carbs, they're going to make you fat, all of these things. It's important to note that we cannot survive without carbohydrates. There's actually our brain needs carbohydrates. Our red blood cells love carbohydrates. If you have an athlete at home or you are an athlete, when you're working out, carbohydrates are king. Um, but carbohydrates, they're different categories. And I think that's where it gets a little bit lost. So with this, again, this is not for you to take a nutrition exam at the end of the day. I feel these are important terms so that when you're reading things like articles, that you get an idea of what they're talking about. Or if you're looking at a science website for some product your clients take in, you want to understand it. These are just some keywords that I think are helpful. Carbohydrates can be simple. They can be complex. Okay, complex carbohydrates are the ones that are typically talked up and preferred, right? Whole grains where they have the brand on them, fiber, which is having its moment with like fiber maxing and everything. And these are great. I'm a big fan of fiber. So whole grains, fiber, those are our more complex carbohydrates. And when we say complex, it's really referring to their chemical makeup. They're big, they're complex. Whereas simple carbohydrates are sugars, things like milk, table sugar, the sugar you get from fruit, refined grains like white rice, pasta. If it's not whole grain, if it doesn't say whole grain pasta, it's going to be a refined. Simple sugars, what's good about them is that they're easily digested and absorbed. So this is where an athlete, if you're about to run a marathon, 30 minutes beforehand, you want to have some simple sugar that your muscles can quickly use and you can run that marathon, right? If you live a more sedentary lifestyle, maybe you're going to want to focus more on those like more complex carbs. But at the end of the day, a balanced diet has it all, right? You're not saying no to this and only yes to that. So sugary beverages, sodas, these are typically simple sugars, and we tend to call these empty calories, like because you're getting a lot of energy from them, but you're not getting any nutrient benefit. Like even a pasta, you're still going to get a little bit of vitamins, even if it's a refined pasta or white rice, you're still going to get like a little bit of vitamins and other things in them, you know? Whereas with soda, you're getting calories, you're getting energy that you may not use, especially if you're just going to drink that soda and like sit at your computer or doom scroll on your phone or type at your desk or drive your car. It's not going to get burned. You're not running a marathon, you know? And the research has shown is that when we drink our calories, our body or brain, our stomach just doesn't notice those calories the way that we do when we eat more complex meals. So there's been a lot of like a lot of like looking into sugary beverages is a challenge. But we'll see what happens now as we have the rise of these prebiotic sodas and all of these newer products where they're trying to, make sodas healthy, which is again, personal preference. If that's what you're into, that's what you're into. I personally, if I'm looking for probiotics and healthiness, I'm not looking in the soda aisle. There's a lot of foods I can get that from, but for other people, they love it. I have clients who are like, oh, I love these probiotics. It's my little treat. I'm like, okay. Or I guess it's prebiotic. It's prebiotic sodas, not probiotic. Okay. And when it comes to conditions, you have a whole webinar on diabetes, but I'm not going to get into it. But diabetes is an altered utilization of carbohydrate and something as health coaches, we definitely, I mean, I ran like 3 diabetes clinics and a ton of health coaching opportunities there, let me tell you. So our next macronutrient. Oh, wait, I forgot to say. So carbohydrates, you can see your gallery is blocking this, but underneath the pictures of the food, we have every gram of carbohydrate is 4 calories. Protein, energy-wise, also every gram of protein is 4 calories. So the building block here, proteins are made up of amino acids. And I think this is helpful because a lot of time when things are marketed, like collagen supplements are often like, oh, hydrolyzed amino acids and all of these terms. So these are helpful terms, particularly if you're looking at supplements, right? So the building blocks of protein are these amino acids. Amino acids are can be essential in that your body can't make it. Anytime you hear something's essential as a nutrient, in a non-marketing context, essential just means your body can't make this nutrient, so you have to get it from food. Animal products provide complete proteins. Complete proteins mean it has not every amino acid in the world, but at least it has every essential amino acid that your body needs, is essential to your body, but your body can't make it. So animal products, eggs, meats, even dairy, they have all of those essential amino acids, whereas there are plants with proteins. If you think of your beans, your nuts, your seeds, they are incomplete in that they have some of the essential, but not all of them. There's a couple plant proteins. So soy is a complete protein. Quinoa is, but it's not like, I wouldn't compare quinoa to like a steak, but it does technically, I think even avocado, but those aren't like, I wouldn't make those your main sources of protein. But what the good news is that with these plant-based proteins, some products like grains, corn, rice, they have one set of these essential amino acids, and then the beans and the nuts, they have the other ones. So when you eat them together or even in the same day, they don't have to be at the same time, but if they're both in your diet, you get all of them. So this is where you see the classics, beans and rice, right? There's the grain with one set of the essential, rice has some, bean has some, you put it together, you've got all of them. Peanut butter and jelly, right? Same. The bread's going to have some, the peanut butter is going to have some, and the jelly's just there for good times, right? So we see this across cultures, how we figured out a way to get all of these in. But like I said, those are great classic combos, but just as long as you're eating them within the same day or regularly in your diet, it doesn't have to be at the same time to get the benefits. And then with proteins, you have different levels of digestibility. So proteins like animal proteins and soy, your body can get like 90% up to 99% of that, whereas beans can be from 70 to 90%. So that's just something to consider if you're working with vegetarians and are saying sometimes it works out great, sometimes they have to eat more to get to that, to meet their needs, right? But that typically is something that more like a dietitian and a doctor would work with, and a health coach. We don't get into that. But if you have someone that's coming in consistently and you're thinking, this needs further research, that's a great time to refer that to like hey, with my people, I like to know the whole care team. Like if I counsel someone, I'm always will send the doctor and say, hey, I saw this patient, this is going on, this is going on. Can you look into this? And it's really great to build a relationship with the rest of the care team. So even if it's something that you can't directly treat as a health coach, you're definitely an important part of the team to get the word out there. Sometimes vegetarian and vegan diets, it's not that they're not eating the quantity that they need, it's that they might be having a restrictive diet. This is something that as younger people, it's always great to know, oh, what like encouraged you? Tell me more. So you're a vegetarian, how long you've been doing that? What led to your decision? For some people, it's religious. For some people, it's my daughter's vegetarian because she just is for the animals, you know. And for other people, it's for health reasons that are okay. A lot of people after cancer diagnosis will find that a vegetarian diet does better for their survivorship. Not everybody, though, and sometimes it can be an early sign of an eating disorder, putting on this restrictive. So just being open to when people are telling you about, their diets. Our third macronutrient, lipids. So again, we typically call this fats. This is the most energy dense. So if you remember, carbs and proteins, 4 calories per gram. Lipids are 9 calories per gram. So most energy dense, we'd say. So if we're in that 1 gram, 1 gram, carbs and protein are going to, even though they're the same size, you're going to get more than double the calories from the fat. Here, the chemistry, the structure is what would make something an oil or a fat. If it's solid at room temperature, that's a fat, right? That's going to be your butters, your coconut oil when it's cool outside. And if it's liquid at room temperature, we call that an oil, right? Your olive oil, all of those. So those are terms you've heard, fats and oils, saturated, unsaturated, and they're just different levels of unsaturated. There's unsaturated, monounsaturated, polyunsaturated. I think one thing to know is that, like I just said, oils and fats, liquid or solid, depend their chemical makeup, and if they're liquid or solid at room temperature. There's one special category called trans fats. Trans fats is what you get in like margarine, and now it's used in food processing. So trans fats are actually solid at room temperature, but unsaturated, right? Because they're not naturally occurring. They're made in a lab. Um, because people, when we went anti-saturated fat, because of all of the connections to saturated fat and heart disease, people are like, but what about butter? So they invented margarine. They created trans fats to create margarine when I was a kid, 70s, 80s. And then later, 30 years later, we found out actually this is worse than saturated fat for your heart. And it got on the trouble list. So that's a that's like its own category because it's not natural, right? And then it became part of food processing because it, helped add shelf life to things. So we see in a lot of like ultra processed foods typically, but because no one calls it trans fat anymore because it has such a bad connotation, they'll call it partially hydrogenized soy oil or something like that. But if you see partially hydrogenized, just know that's like code for trans fat. But again, this will come up more when you're looking at like heart disease, diabetes, that kind of thing. So this is just a takeaway for you because I might have just said all that and you could be like, what was that lady talking about? No worries. It's all right here for you on this slide. The energy, the food groups, where you get it, what it does in your body. Save that one. And then I think it's important to note that like a lot of like if you're on social media or just in media, you're going to hear all different types of eat this, don't eat that. And this is a really great chart that lets you know healthy eating can look like a lot of different things. When we look at carbohydrates, how much carbohydrates do you need? Well, 45 to 65% of your diet. That's a huge range. What about protein? Well, protein 10 to 35, fat 20 to 35. So there's lots of ways to mix that up. So when you're working with clients that are coming in with different diets, don't be alarmed if they don't eat the way you eat or the way that you think people should eat. Susan, you have a question?
You may have mentioned this, but there was a reference to essential fatty acids, or I think
Yeah. So what
on
would
the
an
last slide.
essential, what does essential fatty acid mean? Just that terminology.
Can't produce it.
Your body can't produce it, so you have to get it from your diet. There are 2 essential fatty acids that our body can't produce, omega-3 and omega-6. Omega-3 is the one that's also used as a supplement. I was saying was also a zoo chemical, and that's something that we just have growing large body of evidence on the health benefits. Yeah. And omega-6 is just abundant in food, so it's a lot easier to get. Thank you. So those are the macronutrients. Our micronutrients needed in small amounts, but hey, man, these are powerhouses. This is what I feel like with a lot of people I work with. We spend very little time being like, how can you get more carbs, protein, and fat? And a lot of time being like, wow, you really need these micronutrients. Based on the medications you're on, medications can reduce absorption of things. So these are found mostly, and again, you're part of a team. You're not responsible for managing people's medication. Thank God. So vitamins and minerals mostly found in fresh foods. And if you're getting a wide variety, eating if you've heard eating the rainbow, lots of different colors of foods, then you are going to be getting these key nutrients. And you get additional benefits. So going back to remember I said there's nutrients, vitamins, minerals, but carbs, proteins, and fat and water, but there are also these phyto and zoochemicals. This really play into these colorful foods. So some of these zoochemicals I mentioned, like resveratrol, some of the pigments found in blueberries and strawberries as well, but some of our micronutrients also great phytochemicals because they work as antioxidants, which is something I feel like is really big in like skincare, topically, hair care, all of that good stuff. Cosmetics now use them. So antioxidants are um, they reduce inflammation by neutralizing these sketchy free radicals that are floating around the body. So free radicals are like cells that break, they're not functioning properly, but they're contagious. They'll go to another cell and destabilize that cell so that there's all this instability and like it just will keep going. And antioxidants come in and they kind of like stop the free radical, and then kind of heal that and then it doesn't spread around. You have less free radicals. So that's what antioxidants do. And some of our micronutrients work as antioxidants. So vitamins A, C, and E, and the mineral selenium are both nutrients and antioxidant phytochemicals. And then there are other products, like I said, pigments in different berries that can also work. Finally, we have water. We needed lots of it. We needed large amounts and not enough of us are drinking it. Case in point, let me have a sip of tea. So water is important to help lubricate temperatures, helping the body, waste reduction. And the good news is you don't have to just drink it. Like you get it from food. So fruits and vegetables are at least 90% water. Even meat has water. Juice is obviously a fluid, but we talked about the sugars, just looking for added sugar. And also juice typically doesn't have fiber. So we kind of opt to more like, hey, go with the fruit. The fruit's going to have vitamins, micronutrients. It's going to have natural sugar that's balanced out with fiber. Fiber is something that we don't get enough of. So juice is tricky. Even though at the same time, if I have athletes that are like super skinny, I'm like, juice it up. You need all those calories because you're eating everything healthy. Um, and as I said before, we don't always acknowledge liquid calories, so that's something to be aware of. But dehydration is very common in, I would say all age groups, but our older population, because I think as the pelvic floor kind of weakens, people are scared to drink water and then go outside. The good news is if you're keeping up with your water, it also helps to strengthen your pelvic floor. And you don't have to go from 1 glass a day to 8 glasses a day. Like that's just crazy. That's where as health coaches, we come up with what are manageable steps? What's our ladder to get to this goal from where we are in a realistic way? It's not going to have you peeing your pants on the bus, So these are important things. And this is just a quick, like, if you're trying to figure out water, we typically go like, okay, what's your weight in pounds? Divide that by 2 and drink that many ounces a day. It's just like an easy rule of thumb. Not the most technical, but again, as health coaches, we're not prescribing how much to eat to people. This is not what this presentation is. It's really like, okay, how do we make sure people are meeting their needs? So alcohol. This is the last place. Remember, I was like, where else do we get calories? Well, we get calories from alcohol and a good amount. We get 7 per gram. If you remember, fats, proteins, and carbs, 4 calories per gram. Lipids are 9 calories per gram, and alcohol sneaking in at 7 calories per gram, but we're not getting any benefits from it. And so traditionally our guidelines have been it's okay for men to have up to 2 drinks a day and women 1 drink a day max. Many people have taken this like, oh, that's how much I need to drink. You do not. more and more research is coming out that like alcohol doesn't have any benefits. It actually increases our risk of chronic diseases. So I just read a study this week about its connection with colorectal cancer, heavy drinking colorectal cancer. Um, we've seen it with heart disease, the leading cause of death in America still. It causes loss of B vitamins. And you know, when we talk about 1 or 2 drinks a day, well, we're talking about a 5 ounce glass of wine. You know, we're talking about a 12 ounce, that's a can of beer, or 1 ounce of liquor, right? When if you're dining out, you know, and you might, that's not what you're going to see. A lot of times everything's going to be a lot bigger. You can have double shots. So that has to be considered too with drinking. But yes, this is a chart. If you were like, well, tell me more, you can look at that chart with alcohol. But and it's interesting. Well, we'll talk about it a little bit more. I'm not going to get off track here. So here are nutrients. And again, this is just a little summary sheet for you of what does what. So this is a slide that I used to use in this presentation that I've actually taken out. So I have some slides. These are my presenter slides that you won't have. But these are the leading causes of death according to the CDC in 2024. And this was like interesting to me because the last time I used this slide, it was COVID was on there. It was like number 3, not on the list anymore. And what's interesting, a little alarming to me, is that most of these have gone down except for cancer. And cancer, what we're seeing, it's rising in younger populations. And I really beseech you as health coaches, while we can't diagnose, we're sometimes the one, because we spend longer with patients, like we're able to see signs of things. Like people will come in talking about weight loss, unexpected weight loss or digestion changes and things like that. And cancer doesn't have one face. Like it's not like a lot of the research is like, oh, if you're obese, you drink heavily, you don't exercise, you have a sedentary life, you have this high stress, like family history. Like we have this one picture. And I will say that it has changed a lot. It's changed substantially. And we have to be aware of that when people are coming with symptoms that people aren't hearing, maybe saying, hey, have you thought about getting further testing? Write to that doctor. Be like, I saw this patient today. If you don't feel comfortable saying to the patient because you don't want to alarm them, write to their doctor. You know, send it out there. Be like, hey, they've been complaining about this or that. But anyway, besides this, we have a lot of nutrition research that ties into these. You're already going to do one on heart disease. I think you have one on cancer. I know you have diabetes, other chronic illnesses. So you will see that food does play a role. With Alzheimer's now, we have the mind diet and more around that. With suicide, how does food impact mood is a growing field as well. Um, so yeah, as a health coach and working with people, you will see you will see these conditions and playing into and how the two come together. And what you will see a lot of is things like this, where people are like, oh my goodness, I read the paper, I watch the news, I'm on social media. There is so much information about what I'm supposed to eat. What do I eat? And this slide I update every time with like the new diet. So I feel like um, I've added in the caveman diet, which is really a ketogenic diet. Yeah, this is a fun one to look at. I added the mind diet a couple years back when we started getting the research on Alzheimer's. So, Susan, do you still have a question? Your hand is still up. Okay, thank you. Okay, so for the longest time, the USDA decades has been putting out this. If you look at your slide, I have the source here as USDA. Well, what's interesting is this week that our new administration actually deleted this site. So that will no longer work for you. That's partially why I added in some extra slides, because I'm like, oh my gosh, I had to update all my resources this week. And because this no longer exists, they just deleted it, which I will tell you is very interesting. We've never done that in the past. We've always updated websites and new information using science, but we've never wiped things out. So this is a very in the field of nutrition, this is new. And unfortunately, it's deleted a lot of reliable scientific research and resources that, while you're not a dietitian or a doctor, so you can't prescribe diets, handouts that you could give patients or places you can send them to. So this has been a little disturbing. So I'm going to give you a little bit more background, and then I have a list of new resources for you. So yeah, so you remember the food pyramid from being a kid. Back, I think about 2011, we updated to this plate version, which was, I felt great. Like I was super into it. Like it's kind of more visual. Like who eats in a pyramid? Who's like, let me make dinner. Let me get this triangle out. We're gonna put some peas. Nobody's doing that, right? But this plate was easy to understand. And in the my field of dietetics, we were already doing this. So finally, we're like, finally, they're like on our page. And then this is still around, and I think very helpful if you work with an older population. I love this Tuft page. Like, look at all these drinks. Like, they've got, you can have water, you can have tea, you can have juice. Oh, we're going to do fruits and vegetables. Here are examples. You can have frozen, you can have canned. Because again, when we go back to those social determinants of health, fresh fruits and vegetables aren't for everybody. Like, health wise, maybe they don't have time to chop all that stuff up. So canned vegetables, I really like frozen vegetables because they're picked at their peak nutrition and flash frozen, locking in all those nutrients where you can go to, we've all been to the supermarket and looked at some very sad produce, right? Where it's just been sitting there and the vitamins have just been evaporating into the air over time. So frozen, I use frozen at home too. I think they're great. Canned vegetables, certain ones, you gotta look at the salt content. And now they're doing boxed vegetables, which are a really great option. If someone is health disabled, they're not able to get to the supermarket frequently, these are great options because they have a longer shelf life, right? If you live in a food desert, you take a big trip, 3 buses to get to your supermarket, you want stuff that you can buy that's gonna last. So this is, I think, just really well done. I think anybody, it doesn't just have to be older people. This is great with if you work with like a lower literacy. This is the kind of thing we would create and use in community settings. James talked about that education piece. Great. Like I can be like, eat some whole grains. They're like, that's what, and that is a health coach. That's what you'll see. Someone will go to the doctor. They'll be like, you know what? Your blood pressure's high. Your cholesterol is high. You need to eat more fiber, have more whole grains. And this person's like, what is a whole grain and where do I get fiber? And then, so and that's where they come to health coach. They're like, I don't know that they gave me this handout. What do I do? And that's a great way that you can work through with them. Um, so every 5 years, we have something called the dietary guidelines for the Americans. So the new ones come out, it was 2025 to 2023. I've been in this field for like, I don't know, a long time. And it's interesting. Before, if it was 2025, you get it in 2024. But I've noticed the last couple rounds, you get it at the end of whatever year it's supposed to begin, right? So we got these in December, brand new administration. They decided that they were not feeling the plate. They were not feeling our science. And so they came and they've created a new website. So remember I told you that USD website, they deleted it this week. This is what they've replaced it with, realfood.gov. They have, and they've gone back to the pyramid, but they've made it creative. Now it's an upside down pyramid. So it's pretty controversial because, and I'll talk about on the next slide, in terms of how does it compare to recommendations. Their spokesperson is Mike Tyson. And this just speaks to me as a challenge because this is why I'm a media spokesperson, because I realize that a lot of people are getting their health information from the internet, from influencers, from, people that have no business or education in nutrition, telling people what to eat, taking advantage of people who are afraid, worried about their health, telling them they can cure their illnesses with soursop juice, and just like very crazy things. And so this is challenging for us in the nutrition field. I mean, I'm honestly in meetings about this almost daily of how do we combat this science? Looking at this, you can see very heavy emphasis on meat. Then they said, like, we've always promoted low fat or no fat dairy because it has the same amount of the micronutrients that we talked about. But what happens when you take fat out of something? From what we talked about have an idea? You don't have to raise your hand. You can just say, thinking of energy. Remember, multiple times I've talked about the energy density, the calories per gram. So if I have a fat product and all I do is take the fat, I leave the vitamins, the minerals, but I take the fat, what do you think that's going to do? It's going to make it less calories, right? So in a world where we have 70% of the adult population dealing with overweight and obesity and diabetes, which is type 2 diabetes, which is associated with being overweight and obese, and the GLP-1s can only do so much, what we eat becomes really important. So we've always promoted low fat, no fat dairy. for people to consume less calories because we have such a calorie-rich diet. But our new administration, the leaders of our health and human services are saying, no, have full fat. Try raw milk, why don't you? And yeah, so that goes straight butter. So this has been challenging. And again, I think when you talk about the health conditions, this will come up again with heart disease. And so this is the take from a nutrition expert perspective on this, is that the benefits of this new plan for 2025 to 2030 is that there's a focus on nutrient dense, right? Whole foods, which is great. Like I said, with cancers like colon cancer, ultra processed foods have been associated with an increased risk of colon cancer. And colon cancer, we do see happening in younger and younger people. So that's a good thing, right? Moderate ultra processed foods, adding fiber-rich whole grains, like we talked about, encouraging fruit and vegetable consumption. I mean, this is like the challenge. Like only 8 out of 10 people meet their needs for fruits and vegetables. That's crazy. That means, yeah, 80% of the population is not meeting their needs. Concerns. So increased emphasis on saturated fat from whole fat and meats. Emphasis on red meat contradicts our guidance. And they even say one of our guidelines is limit your saturated fat to 10% of your calories. Well, that's why we do like, hey, eat lean meats like chicken, lower fat ground beef, eat more lean meats, and less red meat. Try to limit your red meat to 2 to 3 times because that's the only way to get your saturated fat down. So here we're having like, well, how do you do that? How do you eat all this drink whole milk and whole dairy and eat this meat all the time, but also not have the saturated fat that harms my heart? So that's a problem, is that like the science isn't fully supporting this, and they haven't given people a roadmap to make this possible. From my meeting I went to on Monday, looking with my pediatric counterparts. I don't do peds, but for them, it's been really hard for children because the guidelines they've made are from 0 to 4. If any of us have had kids, an 8-month-old or a 1-year-old is very different from a 4-year-old. You can't put them on the same diet. It's not going to work. Their bodies can't do it. So it's been a little bit of a mess. And so this is constantly changing. And then, we talked about alcohol. They've removed the alcohol limits, which contradicts the science that we have on, and the science is more moving towards less and less alcohol than, than we had like 15 years ago. And again, you have other talks on heart disease, so that will come up there. And then what about the missed opportunities? People are dairy intolerant. What about those people that can't consume dairy? What about vegetarians and vegans that aren't going to have, that are on plant-based diets? They're not going to be eating red meat and butter. How about the social determinants of health? This diet, is this realistic when you look at people's neighborhood and living conditions? Is this really going to happen? So these are some of the concerns, and there's no mention of physical activity. So these are some of the challenges that we're working through right now. And that brings me back to my happy place. This is the Harvard plate. Harvard, they love research, they love studies, they love doing it, they love being leaders in this field, and they love free stuff. So this Harvard plate predated our USDA plate. I would say they probably copied this. But this is what I love about this, is that if you go to their website, Harvard School of Public Health, they have this healthy eating plate. While they don't have the pictures of the foods, they do have it written out. This comes in like over 20 different languages. So if you're working with a population that doesn't speak English, you can get this for them. They're also willing to work with people. If you go and you're like, hey, what about my language? And they're like, sorry, we don't have it, but we'll work with you to develop it. So they're great. Physical activities mentioned, examples are given, easy plate, and they have a kids version. So they are really they're doing the work over there, and again, they're using research. That's the struggle that we're having right now with the nutrition guidance that we're getting. As CDC people are leaving, a lot of the resources, they're not getting, the funding has been cut, so we're not getting updates on research. So it just makes it a little trickier to get reliable health information right now. Does someone have a question or comment before we move on any of these topics, before we go to the next section?
I do. This is Carrie. I have a question about our role as a coach. So you showed us like this is an amazing resource, this healthy eating plate. Would you say as a coach, we would go so far as discussing this healthy eating plate with a client. And then at that point, if there are more questions, et cetera, we send them to a nutritionist. What is our level? What is our engagement versus like
Yeah.
an expert per se?
Yeah, so I would say like an example would be that patient that went to their doctor and they're like, "Oh, your cholesterol is so high. I want you on a statin and I want you to eat whole grain and fiber and limit your saturated fat, blah, 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 blah." And the person's just like deer-eyed with the handout. I don't know what to do. Um, and then they go to the dietitian and we're like, oh, here's a diet for you. And then gives them a diet with that plan. And they're looking, just like, how do I make this happen? And then they come to the health coach, and the health coach is like, well, I'm all here for behavior change. When you look at this plate, well, how does your diet compare now? What are the changes that you want to make? What would you like to tackle on this? Do you want more physical activity? Do you want to focus on whole grains? Because as we know, you can't do it all overnight. So let's look for some low-hanging fruit, something, a change that you, because that's what we always, I'm going to talk about this, but we always want success first. And I'm actually, that's why I asked this, because I'm going to move into the health coaching aspect of all this now. So maybe we'll wait and then we'll see. Anybody else about the actual nutrition part of it before we move on? Okay. And these are just examples of some more evidence-based options that you can go out there and find, like blue zone diets. These are where the areas in the world where people have been living, they have the highest number concentration of centenarians, people living to 100 or more. What I love about this is that it's not one diet. So, like I was talking about, the influencers and social media, they're like, you have to eat this one food. If you're not from the West Indies, you probably don't even know what soursop is, and it's crazy to go out there and find it. But these blue zones are in California, they're in Japan, they're in the Mediterranean. So you kind of get like all different types of diets. It's great. And so with different populations, they can find something they can align with. The Mediterranean diet, I love this because it's lots of recipes online. For Carrie's question, when you're working with a client and they're like, okay, I get it, that's great, but how do I make these foods? It's very easy to look for recipes, basic recipes online for free on the Mediterranean diet. Lots of reliable, trustworthy websites you can find this. This is very scientific. This is the DASH diet. This is something that your clients will come in if they have hypertension. This is the handout if they, when they go to the hospital, if they have like a heart event or something, they're going to go to the hospital. And this is what the nurse or the dietitian is going to give them. They're going to give them the DASH diet handout. And then that's again, that's when they're going to come to be like, I don't know what to do with this. And then you guys can come up with goals, right? And so this is just a breakdown. And what's cool about all these, they overlap. Unlike our new guidance to eat more red meat and whole fat, these kind of all align. Fruits and vegetables, whole grain, low fat dairy to reduce the calories, lean proteins, and then different micronutrients will pop up. Limit sugary drinks, red meat, saturated fat, sodium. Pretty consistent. Um, the one other thing I want to add right now, as before I wrap this up, is the importance of looking at ultra processed foods. This is big in the social determinants of health. This is what I have meetings and meetings and meetings on, in that how with a limited budget, ultra processed foods are cheaper. And there's different degrees. There's your Dorito ultra processed food, and then there is your food that your breakfast cereal that's fortified with fiber, iron, or other micronutrients that we know people don't get enough of in their diet. So foods will be, you'll often, if you look at a breakfast cereal, you'll see in the ingredient list that they've added different vitamins and minerals that people won't get otherwise because they don't eat fruits and vegetables or they, and so you can't throw all ultra processed foods out. We do say aim more for the minimally processed foods because it's all processed. Like if you buy peanuts, peanuts are a processed food. That's not how it came out of the ground. So we're all eating processed foods, right? Like none of us are hand making our pasta. So to say we have to eliminate these foods and in the light of the social determinants of health, it's just not realistic. And that's why I really wanted us to look at those social determinants of health because all of this information in science is great. But like Carrie said, at the end of the day, you're sitting down with another person and you have to look at their experience and where they're coming from. And it's very important to build that relationship of understanding and not be dictating to them, hey, this is what you have to eat or how you have to eat, you know? But at the same time, if someone's coming in and they're like, I'm eating so healthy, and you're looking at this, you're like, I don't see any fruits and vegetables, I don't see your micronutrients, you know that there's work and more discussion, and maybe a different stage of change needs to be transitioned to. And knowing that everything you eat does not have to have a health benefit. If someone on a 2,000 calorie a day diet, there is room for a Snickers bar. You can meet all of your needs, you know, in a certain amount of calories, and that still leaves you room for some goodness. And so it's not about being perfect. None of us are perfect. None of us wants to be perfect. How boring and exhausting. When our clients come in, we just want to be gentle. We want to honor where they are. I feel Patricia brought up, or Patrician brought up, that, food is more than just nutrients. It's more than just social terms of health. It can be how we connect, how we enjoy, how we meet up and engage with the people that we love. So we have to take all that in consideration. And I'm not saying like you have to be a nutrition Nazi. This is looking at different calorie counts and how do you meet those? If you're on a 1600 calorie, what does that look like for fruits and vegetables? And this is a slide to say, this is pretty simple, right? 1600 calories, 2 cups of vegetables, 1.5 cups of fruit, certain amount of protein. Simple. Is it easy? Absolutely not. That's why we have health coaches, because we can all say, oh, I have this diet plan. This is amazing. But actually putting it into practice is something different and where you're going to want to have a coach. So transitioning on to our health and wellness part of it. So some red flags for me is looking at for people with a lot of rules around their eating, a lot of shooting on themselves, right? And then people binge eating on unrealistic goals, putting themselves down. This is like, oh, I hate when people come in, they're just putting themselves down. I feel so bad for them. And I feel as a health coach, when I'm working with someone, I want to make sure that they leave feeling good about themselves and empowered and believing in their ability. So, um, and then signs of like things are not going well, and you need to write that doctor. They're coming in, they're like, I've got a lot of nausea, vomiting, constipation, diarrhea, write their doctor. Um, Losing rapid weight, malnutrition risk, write their doctor. Other signs are people are trying to hit their ideal body weight. That's not a real thing. That was something invented by insurance companies to understand insurance claims, right? From a long, long time ago, too, not even recently. Weight cycling. You're going to get people who have been on 50 diets. These are the people that really come in literally hating themselves. And because they feel like they think it's them. They're like, I failed. Whereas dieting and diet culture has set them up to fail. We know that when people try to lose weight, they make these weight loss goals. Within 3 months, 50% of them have dropped off. So only 50% of them are still achieving that goal. At 6 months, only 30 to 40% are achieving that goal. And by 1 year, only 20% of people are still on that track. So we know these don't work. So as health coaches, this is where we come in. We help with that behavior change, right? Because they're going to come in feeling like failures, with lacking confidence, lacking self-compassion. We know that when people lose weight, they gain that weight back and often gain back even more. So when I was in school, the show The Biggest Loser was on TV, and I was fascinated by the show. I was like, this is like everything I've learned not to do in school. Wow. And it was this big deal show, Jillian Michaels and Bob. And they came up with a documentary recently of like looking back at that show and talking to people who were on it, and just like it's really good. If you want to see like why you want to be a health coach and who needs you, those people that were tortured by diet culture. And understanding that everybody's not meant to be 150 pounds, right? Like that's not a reality. And a lot of times their clients, they need to learn to love who they are and not try to be something different. And why is that? Because we have energy, calorie needs, but many things can change that. Your age, your stress levels, your body, how much you exercise, your hormones are going to come into play. And so we have general guidelines for like weight maintenance, weight gain or loss. And when it comes to weight loss, if you have people who are like, oh my gosh, my weight is impacting my health. I have all this, I'm diabetic, got heart problems, I have sleep apnea. I'm not saying you can't help someone lose weight or, contribute to that, but do it safely. So NIH's weight loss guidelines have been 10% of your body weight in 6 months, right? Which works out to like 1 or 2 pounds a week. The problem is that people underestimate what they can do in a year and overestimate what they can do in 3 months, right? Or even nowadays, 1 month, right? And that's where, as health coaches, we need to like help people bring them to the light. right? Have that come to Jesus moment with them about what real weight loss looks like. Um, we try to go food first before like supplements because foods tend to like, remember we talked about the juice and I talked about the juice and the fruit. So food's great because it will have waters filling, it'll have fiber that's filling, not just one nutrient, where supplements are just a pill. And so you want to get all those benefits. And plus supplements, like so much research has come out about how dirty they can be. Like they took 56 supplements and some of them didn't even have what they claimed to have. Others had huge doses. And so you want to get supplements that are third party testing. I take supplements, and let me tell you, those, even with my, I remember, even with my professional discount, pricey to get the like high quality third party tested supplements that's like, oof, hurts. Um, yeah, third party testing is important. And then looking in the mirror, reflecting on ourselves, looking at the weight bias that's in society. Many of us have internalized. I've internalized it. It's something I struggle with, right? And so when our clients come in also suffering from this, I need to weigh this one thing, we need to be cool with it and be like, you know what, there are many ways to meet your needs. What are your preferences? Back to those social determinants of health with cultural practices and the newer movements of health at every size. You can be healthy in a larger body, right? Um, if you work with children, Ellen Satter, she had really great books on helping younger eaters or as parents helping how to encourage mindful eating in children. Like I said, there's no ideal body weight. And another thing, weight is not a sign of health. And I think this is what's happening with our cancer is that patients are going in with these symptoms, these younger people in their 20s and their 30s. They look healthy, they're athletic, and it doesn't fit our profile because we have weight bias. And so they don't get the care that they need until it's too late. And so weight is not the only sign of health. And if when you see someone come in, they look really healthy and they're telling you they're not, or they have these things going on, that's the diet culture working in your brain. And you need to like not say, oh my God, I'm a terrible person, but let the awareness come because the awareness is how we always begin with ourselves and others. We need to be aware before we can change things, right? And just knowing out there, like when patients are coming in or clients are coming in, our LGBTQIA plus community, they have worse outcomes, right, than our cisgender. Trans people, because of all of the stigma and the way that they get mistreated, especially right now, their rights are constantly being given and taken away. They're less likely to seek medical care. However, one guideline we have, when you do, you want to consider their health markers as their sex, not their gender. So sex is your piping, gender is your identity. So we treat when we're looking at like, oh, what are the guidelines for you? It's going to be based on sex, not gender. People of color have higher death rates while in medical care. If you add being a woman to that, a woman of color, ooh, if you, it's hard out there. So that's where we want to be that compassionate voice and also that advocate. And English as second language patients are more likely to be misdiagnosed. I would say as a guideline as a health coach, if you do not fluently speak a language and someone can't really speak any language that you speak and you don't have access to an interpreter, by medical guidelines, you wouldn't see that people. In a hospital setting, like I speak Spanish because I'm not 100% fluent, I'm not allowed to work with Spanish speaking patients without an interpreter. And this is why. So I would say as a health coach, hold yourself to that same standard, refer them along. And so just wrapping up weight management, when it comes to me, notice at the bottom, this is not evidence-based practice. This is my practice-based evidence of like however 16 years I've been doing this now, is that diet's important, physical activity is important, but the most important thing is behavior change, and that's where health coaches come in. As a health coach, number one fan, helping people and yourself to realize everything you need you already have. You want to tap into you want to help people tap into what they already know. There's nobody out there, even James. I mean, you were saying you didn't have a lot of health or nutrition literacy, but you know fruits and vegetables were good for you. You knew that, right? You didn't need education on that. And so your people are coming in and it's like, this is basics. We're working on basics here, you know? Um, and understanding that you're not giving, as a health coach, you're not giving them answers. They've already been to a doctor, they've already talked to a dietitian. You're not giving them the answers. That's not your role. Your role is to be their number one fan and catch and assess them first, right? Looking at for things like magic bullets. Because I'll tell you now, people will come in hoping for a magic bullet. And honestly, in the beginning of your practice, you're going to get someone who's been to like 7 doctors, 3 nutritionists, a couple of other therapists, and you're their last resort. That's a hard patient. But you know what? That's just how it is. In the beginning of your practice, I went through those people where, oh my gosh, they were so much work and so challenging. But that's just how that's in the beginning, unless you have like unless you're like a Nepo health coach, that's how it's going to be when you're building your practice, and just be ready for it and be open to it. But people do come in looking for a magic bullet. You do have to have your boundaries. And this is what's important. You really have to look at what do they need versus what they want. This is the dance. You're building a relationship, but you also have to be realistic. So that person that's coming in that's demanding from you that you print them out an entire 5-day diet plan when you're like, I'm not a dietitian. That's not my wheelhouse. And you're stressed because you want the client, you want the relationship, you want the money, but you have to be like, you know what? It's not worth it. One, you could get in a lot of trouble because that's illegal. If you're a health coach, should be providing diets to people. I know people do it, but don't get in it like that. That you didn't join this course to learn how to give people diets. You joined this course to help people with behavior change and empower them, that. So do that. It's scary and it's hard because it's newer and it's not people want you to tell them what to do, right? But that's not what we do as health coaches, right? You have to look at the social determinants of health and meet them in that place. You know, do they have access to healthy, whatever they need to be healthy? Can they afford it if it is there? And is it available? Does it exist? Or is it 3, 5, 7 buses and a train away? And so in this place, when you're assessing, try nonviolent communication. That's something that will come up later for you, but looking at wants versus needs, because people come with a lot of wants and you have to break down what do they need, and that's the unpacking, that's the relationship building. And what is their stage of change? Where are they? Are they really ready? Are they like pre-contemplation where they're like, I can't, I won't? Can you reflect to them? It sounds like you're not interested in doing this. And I've had patients like this where I'm like, you're not interested in this right now, right? So these are just tips on how to build their confidence. Come in with self-compassion. It's a lifestyle, not a duty. I've had patients where I'm like, dude, you're about to have an amputation for your diabetes. You lost 1 kidney for the CKD that you got from not taking care of your diabetes. We really feel like maybe Coca-Cola is not the way to go and the fried chicken. And this patient has looked at me and been like, I'm not willing to make those changes. And I said, okay, you're the boss of your health. It's not my job to make you change, right? As a health coach, you can't put that on yourself with people's diet. Like that man was 3 times my age, knew where he was at, had been dealing with his health for longer than I've been in practice. And if he says to me, I'm not interested, I'm like, okay, cool. I'm not your boss. Like I'm going to say, okay, that's cool. Here's some information. If you change your mind, you give me a call. Never heard from that man again. Went through the same thing in a more of a coaching session with someone. That guy was like, I thought, honestly, he came to see me in person. We did like a Zoom and then he showed up. And I remember thinking, oh my God, this guy is coming to kill me because he was so angry at me. But he came in person and like was ready to make change, like opened his heart, told me all of these things because he'd gone from pre-contemplation and not ready to change to something in his life happening where he really wanted to change. And he saw me as someone going to dictate to him like everybody else did. That was just like, hey, I honor you. This is your choice. And even if like, why am I going to try to force someone to do something they don't want to do or they're not ready to do? That's just like, he's not going to feel good and it's not going to work out. And then he came and he became great. And it was like the things he unpacked about his motivation were so much about his dad and his family. And it was really beautiful. And he did make change. And he was like, my goal is that I can get a kidney transplant one day. I'm like, great, let's work on that. How's that going to happen? What's that going to look like? What are you going to need to do? This kid knew as much about diabetes and nutrition as I did. I didn't need to teach him that. I needed to help him find what his why, his motivation, and work on that and then make those behavior changes that he hasn't been able to make for 10, 15 years. And that's so Casey, that's how it fits in. Or Carrie, sorry, that's how it fits in, right? Not dictating, but holding space, listening. And then when people come, and then people get, and then it starts to go, wow, the relationship's building. They're like, yeah. And then suddenly they want to make these big, crazy goals. And you're like, there's no way you're going to do that in a week. And I mean, you don't say it like that, but inside you're like, damn, you're like eating fried chicken every day. And now you're going to like cook all your meals. When you do takeout 70% of the time, you're going to cook all your meals, fresh vegetables that you're going to grow in your garden. That's not happening. So that's where you have to be realistic with them. Be like, okay, so where do you want to start? Let's pick one thing because early on when you're coaching, you want low-hanging fruits where they can have a quick success that builds their confidence, builds their self-compassion, because we always want them to be confident. How do we build confidence? Early wins. We look at past successes. I can have like a patient going through so many things. Many times my patient's been going through it for so many years, right? And so I can say, oh, when is a time in the past that you were able to follow whatever healthy eating or physical activity, this physical activity, and they'll go back in time and I'll say, how did you do that? And then they'll lay it out. And I'll be like, oh, okay, that seemed to work for you, or what do you think? And then and that's it. You draw it all out of them because these people aren't coming in. They're not stupid. You don't have to, the lecture I just gave you, you don't need to give them. That's just going to scare them away. They're like, oh my God, I went to this nutrition lecture. The person was crazy, right? Like, this is it. You want to build a relationship. You want to bring out the good that exists in them. You want to connect to why is this important? What are your values, right? To make it. And this is where I feel like health coaches get so scared because we often lack that confidence that we think when they come in, they're like, give me a diet, tell me what to eat. That's not your that's not what you're meant to do. And then you feel stressed because you don't know. And then you're signing up for all these nutrition certificates and you lose the plot. The plot is that stick with evidence, know your scope of practice. You're a coach, not an expert on nutrition. Ask permission. If they're telling you, you say, hey, can I just show you this Harvard healthy eating plate? See, maybe it'll help you, maybe it won't. But can you give me permission to share that with you? You know? And be authentic. Like you don't have to be perfect and have all the answers. So these are we are actually wrapping up. So these are some things that I want you to just reflect on. I know you guys did open-ended questions, so I'm going to let you leave these with you of some of the things we've talked about. Remembering, so this is, I'm going to give you the answers. So I want to lose 15 pounds in the next 30 days for my wedding. Remember the NIH weight loss guidelines, right? 1 to 10% of your body weight in 6 months, 1 to 2 pounds a week. So think of that as you're making your open-ended questions. Here's some of so that's the answer is remembering the science, but you're not going to say to them, NIH says. Like that is not how you build rapport or a connection with your client by sending them a fact when they're shedding and opening their heart to you of their dreams, right? You don't say, well, NIH says that you should really, nobody wants to hear that. But you know it in the back of your head. And so this is like, you got to get to the bottom of where this is coming from. So tell me more. How's that going? Big day, you have a vision. So open-ended questions, but also reflections. It's a very precise number. What does it mean to you? How did you pick it? Is it you want to fit in your grandma's wedding dress from like 1920? Is it like you just have that you've always been told this is what a woman should weigh? Like, what are we unpacking here? And that's what we're doing, right? Not citing facts to them. And here are just some more practice questions for you. If this is something like when it comes to nutrition, I've seen every one of these people, and so, yeah. So when it comes to like, I'll pay you by the pound I lose, that is again, wants and needs, them putting the work on you. Don't pick up that work. Say, hey, is this something you want me to give you a plan? Is this something you struggled with before? What in the past has worked for you? Have you had success in the past? And because you always want to get to the root of like, why do they want this? So why are they want this so badly? A lot of times it's going to come down to love. It's going to come to love of their children, love of their family, seeing a parent pass away, not wanting that to happen, wanting to be there. So you want to get to the bottom of that rather than like spouting out what they need to do. And this is my evidence-based resource list for you. I updated some of this is not. I took out what wasn't working this week. And so I have, what I'm going to do? I sent this to Rita, but she wasn't able to post it for you. I have a URL to this list. So I'm going to give that to Rita so that you can access this. And you need to use the link. It won't work as a PDF because you want to be able to click on, I've highlighted the top 3 here. CDC, I had to unhighlight because CDC is losing its funding right now, so they're not going to be updating. There's a lot of internal strife over the whole vaccine thing, so there's issues there. But these are 3 websites that you can use and you can access to look up information. If, I do it before I see a client, in between sessions. And that's it. You have my contact information. Feel free to reach out to me. And good luck with everything. Welcome to health coaching.
Thank you so very much. I think you all can appreciate that wealth of information that Vanessa shared. And she indicated that there's some updates that she made. I will post it on Canvas. So thank you for that. For those of you that are ready, I will give you your second keyword. That keyword is presence. Presence. Thank you again, and I hope you all have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you, Vanessa, and thanks, Rita, for being the support.
You're
Guys,
welcome.
it was really nice to meet you all.
Thank you. So